Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is November 11th. It's Monday, November 11th, 2019. And in the United States here, it is also Veterans Day. And there's a few things we want to talk about regarding Veterans Day. I'm going to screen share in just a minute, but I want to also welcome my, sorry, I didn't mean to push that button so quickly. I also wanted to say this is our GoldFish Report number 405. It is our week 146 POTUS report with apparently the most dangerous mind in America, Jim Fetzer. How are you, my friend?
Oh, Louisa, as I was telling you, the plaintiffs in my lawsuit have now submitted a motion to the court to incarcerate me if I continue to talk about the case. I mean, it's absolutely insane. But we also have the fortuitous coincidence of the anniversary of the founding of the Marine Corps.
Absolutely. And I'm going to do something special today. Instead of presenting my normal report about the president, I'm going to do something special for Veterans Day today. I am going to highlight a few things that the president has done in honor of Veterans Day. And then I'm going to hand this over to my esteemed colleague here, my co-host, Jim Fetzer, because Jim is a retired Marine Corps officer. And I wanted to have Jim discuss his own personal experience of serving our country.
Not retired, Louisa. That's usually reserved for persons who spend their whole career in the Marine Corps. I'm a former Marine Corps officer.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you, Jim. So I'm going to start this, and then we're going to hear from Jim about his personal experience, because what I want to do is highlight for people who do not have the benefit of having, military in their family, or anyone who has served, either as an officer or as a soldier. Have a little firsthand experience of what it's like. Jim's, been around for a while, and these experiences are going to go with the next generation if we don't preserve them. And I think it's important that all these Marines, all of these, all branches of military, the Navy, the Air Force, Marines, the Army, that their stories are told. And I think it's important to tell the stories so we never forget where we came from, and really, why we're fighting for our freedom. So let me start with right now, I just want to let you know that the president is in New York City. It is Monday morning. He and the First Lady are going to they're going to attend a wreath-laying ceremony for Veterans Day, and they will be attending they will deliver remarks at the New York City Veterans Day Parade. So just so you are aware of that. I don't want that there. Okay. So last week on November 7th, the president introduced a bill. It was Senate Bill 693, National POW MIA Flag Act, which honors service members who are prisoners of war or missing in action by increasing frequency of the POW and MIA flag displayed on specific federal properties. And this is really good, because I know that even some condo associations, I have seen reports that they have banned people from hanging a POW flag outside of their property. I don't know if this is going to change that, but at least on federal property, this will be more visible. I also wanted to screen share something that the president had shared in the Oval Office to commemorate this. I'm going to play this quick video for you. I don't know if you can hear it.
Yeah.
And that's the president sharing the, hold on a second, got to stop that from playing again. That's the president commemorating the POW, the signing of that act right there. There was also on the 8th, there was also a press briefing in the James Brady press briefing room, which hardly gets, you have to brush the dust off the seats on that briefing room these days, by the Secretary of Veterans of Foreign Affairs, Robert Wilkie. They were talking about this is an important week. It's not only Veterans Day today, but today is also the 244th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And what I wanted to talk about first was what they were talking about with regard to veterans and taking care of veterans. And what he's trying to talk about is that he's really trying to increase the efficiency and the care of the VA administration, of the VA hospitals for our veterans. And they did sign into the president has authorized them to have the largest budget in the history of the department, $220 billion, calling for 400,000 employees. So that's big, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to say now that because of this influx of funds, that they have been able to increase the quality of care such that the American Medical Association has said that it's as good, if not better, than the private sector. So that remains to be seen. We have people reporting over 3 million appointments at the VA last year. And also they have launched what's called the Mission Act, which integrates the VA with the entire American healthcare system. So this allows the veterans to have more freedom in their choices for care. And so that's an important thing to note. It is on our blog and you can check that out. And so I wanted to screen share this before I hand this over to my friend here. I wanted to just screen share that this is, as we said before, the 244th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. And of course, we want to thank all of our veterans, not just the Marines, but all of our Army veterans, our Navy veterans, our Air Force, and now our Space Force. I don't know if we have veterans of the Space Force, but we want all of our armed services veterans. We want to honor them and thank them for their service, and of course, those who made the ultimate sacrifice. We want to thank them and their family for their patriotism to our country, because socially, that's what we're fighting with socialism, folks. This is also the anniversary this week of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so that's a huge accomplishment, that we defeated communism over in the eastern part of Germany and Eastern Europe there. And that's what this is about. Now, if you think that's what the Democrats are offering right now, is more is communism, basically socialism. So I would be very careful if you're putting your support behind Democrats right now, because they're misguiding you. But here, the president says, I wish to send wishes to the United States Marine Corps on its 244th birthday. Since 1775, Marines have been known for always being faithful to their duty, which is what Semper Fi means, to defend our country and Constitution, and for striking fear in the hearts of American adversaries. From their inception at Toon Tavern in Philadelphia, Marines have fought in every climate and place without ever losing their nerve. We solemnly look ahead to the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima this coming February. We are reminded that even in the face of hostile enemy fires, Marines never falter and never fail. Their courage shown over the course of that battle, memorably captured in the iconic photo of our flag being raised at Mount Suribachi, is forever enshrined in the heart of our nation. And I do have that image here that I'm going to screen share in just one second. But Jim, you sent me a couple of photos, and I wanted to screen share them with our viewers, because in honoring this Veterans Day, and since you're a veteran, my friend, I wanted to ask you to say something about your service, and something that you don't want to get lost on history, no matter how they rewrite it or what they do, that there's something that was profound to you and that you would want to pass this kind of message on. And I'm looking for my folder, I'm sorry, that has these pictures in it. So why don't I go ahead and hand that over to you, my friend, and I'll screen share while you're talking, okay?
Yeah, please do, Louisa, because everyone's military experience is different. I was commissioned a second lieutenant, a regular officer in the Marine Corps on graduation from Princeton in June of 1962. We can see that in an image if Louisa finds it. I was trained first as an infantry officer at Quantico, and then as an artillery officer at the U.S. Artillery and Missile School at Fort Sill in Lawton, Oklahoma, before I was sent on my first assignment 13 months to the Far East, including training ops in Japan twice, in Korea, in Formosa, and in the Philippines. I was never in country. No doubt a good thing, because I believe that the Vietnam War was a colossal mistake. I was then assigned to the recruit depot in San Diego, where I was in command of 15 DIs and 300 recruits going through the training cycle. Among my efforts as a Marine, I was promoted to captain the second year at the recruit depot, and wrote a letter on behalf of my brother, who was in fact a conscientious objector. It may be the first time that a draft board ever received a letter from a regular duty active Marine Corps officer in support of a conscientious objector, but I knew my brother was sincere, and it was my responsibility to write on his behalf, where he was classified on a divided vote 3-2 as a conscientious objector and avoided fleeing to Canada. I would subsequently resign my commission as a captain in June of 1966 to enter graduate school in the history and the philosophy of science at Indiana University. Yeah, see there in the bottom left, that's a graduation in my whites. Above the, up here in my whites here, my father and stepmother and a family friend. Here was at the recruit depot in San Diego, where I was a series commander. Here, my first wife pinning on my bars as a captain. The other photographs are from Princeton, and the professor for whom I wrote my undergraduate thesis. I was anchored out in Kaohsiung Harbor aboard the landing platform helicopter Iwo Jima. That's a shallow hull carrier for helicopters to take off and land. They don't need the long, stable platform of fixed-wing aircraft. When the officer of the deck awakened me at 3:30 in the morning to tell me the president had been shot, he awakened me an hour later to tell me they caught the fellow who done it. He was a communist. I thought then that was very fast work. I, of course, began in 1992 serious work on the assassination of JFK, and here you see me at the Eternal Flame in Arlington, Virginia, where I now have 4 books on JFK, where I brought together the best experts on the case, and we shattered the cover-up, discovering the autopsy x-rays had been altered, including especially to conceal a massive blow-up to the back of the head, that the brain shown in diagrams and photographs in the National Archives is not even the brain of JFK, and that the home movies of the assassination, including the Zapruder film, were massively edited to conceal the true causes of death. My most recent of these books is available, JFK, Who, How, and Why, Solving the World's Greatest Murder Mystery, at moonrockbooks.com.
And here's the iconic image that we're talking about. This battle, the Marines hoisting the U.S. flag at the Battle of Iwo Jima. Of course, a very similar one was photographed at Ground Zero on 9/11. Everybody remembers that. And it was so iconic. It was just, this is the spirit of America. This is the spirit. This photo shows the spirit of the Marines, of the military, of the people who love this country. And Jim, I just wanted to say, thank you for your service and for your patriotism. And we're in a different kind of war today, Jim. It's not your conventional warfare, as General Flynn has discussed.
What certainly instilled in me not only a sense of discipline, but a dedication and devotion to the best interests of my country, which have driven me in my pursuit of exposing all these sham events orchestrated by the government for the benefit of the American people who are entitled to know the truth about their own history.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't serve in the military or anything, but I mean, I can't imagine feeling betrayed by our country, for some of the involvements that we've had that have been pretty much for the wrong reason. And I think, of course, they've even, did everything they could to brush the Korean War under the carpet. And hardly anybody knows about it and really talks about it. But my father served in the Korean War, and it was a forgotten war. And why do you think that is, Jim?
Well, because it wasn't a success. It was a draw. It was a stalemate. We settled with an armistice. I do believe Trump has made some gestures that are actually going to lead to the reunification of the two Koreas, because they're, I think, picking up the initiative on their own, and that it almost certainly would not have taken place but for his intervention. So regardless of how we work out our negotiation with North Korea, I believe that North and South Korea are on the path to uniting the country once again.
Well, I have to say, personally, my family's all U.S. Army. I have lots of U.S. Army members in my family, and of course, I'm a daughter of the American Revolution, and I go back to obviously long time ago, my family. So, military service is big in our family. But I have to say, the I think the ones that are most in my life are the Marines. My first boyfriend was a Marine, and of course, my other co-host, Winston Shrout, is a former Marine as well. And of course, here I am with another Marine Corps member. I mean, come on, it's just there's something about between the Marines, but I was never into sailors. I have to say, there's something about my aunt was, but I wasn't. My aunt married 4 of them, not all at
4 of
once.
them.
Yeah, she kept saying, "I'll keep trying, honey, till I get it right." What a great attitude.
Love it.
I
Love
know.
it.
But it's
Well,
been.
my second wife and I have been married now 42 years. So
Oh, congratulations, Jim. That's quite an achievement too, I have to say, because most marriages end in divorce, and that is really, even harder to for second marriages too. But her fourth, lasted a long time. I think she finally got it right, like she said, and she was all sailors though, all sailors. So it was interesting. Couldn't imagine how she hooked that up. But anyway, I want to thank all of our veterans for your service, for your time, for your sacrifice, for your commitment, for your dedication to this country. On behalf of myself and everyone at the GoldFish Report, we want to thank you and we honor your service. And Jim, I just wanted to ask you also that can you just tell me, was there one really pivoting moment, or was there something in particular that was really, that maybe was a game changer for you with respect to either your service in the military, or was it the JFK assassination itself that was like a game changer for you and made you open your eyes to something a little different when it came to the U.S. government?
well, there was an incident when I was the officer of the day at the recruit training regiment, responsible for everyone in the regiment, and one of our recruits became ill and was taken to the infirmary. And when I checked out the situation, having directed that the medical officer of the day give him immediate attention, he was still asleep, which led me to awakening him and insisting he attend the recruit, who in fact turned out to have spinal meningitis. Actually, it turned out that there was a court-martial hearing for the officer for dereliction of duty. And I think it just reinforced my sense of the obligation we have as officers to look out for the best interests of our Marines, and in the case now as a citizen of the United States, to look out for the best interests of the American public.
Well said, Jim. And you do, you're once a Marine, always a Marine, though, Jim. I mean, you're, you traded your gun for words, and you're shooting each word like they're bullets, and you're getting, fired back at, actually. And this is an analogy, but this is very true. I mean, your words have become bullets. Your words of truth, Jim, have replaced your bullets in your machine gun, and you're getting fired. The fire's coming back at you in this court case regarding your freedom of speech. This is an unconventional war that we're fighting for sure today. This army of digital soldiers, as General Flynn said, and it's a very, very complicated war. It's a war for our minds, actually, and our souls, Jim. Is really what it is. And I also wanted to acknowledge the fact that there are many who have been victims and victimized by our military, by the satanic elements within our military, who have engaged in MK Ultra mind control, that torturing of individuals under these programs. Sadly, that's a very sad mark against our military, and I have to say that because I have to show respect to the victims of those horrible programs. And those will, we do report on that on the GoldFish Report. I've interviewed people who've been part of the MK Ultra programs. These people, their lives have been really stolen from them to be used as Manchurian candidates, to be used as sleeper assassins, and all kinds of projects and programs. And, these unwittingly and, not by their consent, of course, not voluntarily. So we will present more about that as we get more of that information. But I wanted to say that as much as I love our country and I love our patriots, we absolutely have to hold the military accountable for what they have done in these MK Ultra programs. And we have to realize that, like we said, it's a spiritual war. It's an unconventional war. And it is. There is a satanic element. There is satanic law. And the more you know about it, folks, the more you'll be prepared to confront the enemy and fight the enemy. So having said that, I wanted to just, thank all of our soldiers who are true patriots like yourself, Jim. And of course, we're true patriots at the GoldFish Report. And I wanted to just, take a moment to honor my former co-host, Winston Shrout. We miss him terribly. We wish him well. We pray for his family, and we pray for him as well. We do pray that there will be, that justice will be served ultimately, just like in Jim's case here. I don't feel, Jim, that you're being treated fairly. I don't think this is justice. I think you're being made an example out of, so people will
Louisa,
stop.
I'm very happy with the way things stand. There's been tremendous interest, a resurgence of interest in Sandy Hook because of the absurdity of the punishment. $450,000 for a few sentences describing a death certificate as fabrication, when I had ample proof that it is a fabrication, including the testimony of 2 forensic document examiners. They have put me in the situation where I can take apart this case with a brilliant attorney who's now at my side, and I expect to prevail, and that the public is going to learn the truth about Sandy Hook because of this lawsuit.
Well, we kind of saw this, this is what we thought, Jim. This is, I remember mentioning this to you, when in the earlier phases of this litigation, that, this could in fact be the case that breaks Sandy Hook wide open. And of course, we all know that, Operation Mockingbird was the CIA program to control all of the media. And through that control, they're controlling what they're telling people, the facts that they're withholding and hiding, and why they did what they did. And Jim has it in his books, and he's reported on this report many times. Jim, I support your search for truth, and I support your opinion. I don't always agree with it, but I do support your right to having your opinion. And in this case, your evidence and the evidence of the book that you edited certainly shows an overwhelming support that there was something obviously orchestrated, and they're not telling the American people the truth. So having said that, Jim, I'm going to hand this over to you, and I want to thank you once again, my friend, for your service to our country and to all veterans.
Thank you, Louisa. Very good of you to recognize veterans today. Red Paul has observed that Trump can't call Hunter Biden and the whistleblower to testify. Impeachment is a sham. It looks as though that's in fact going to be the game plan. Lindsey Grant, when we find out the whistleblowers from the deep state, this whole thing is going to stink to high heaven. It already does stink to high heaven. He continued, well, if the whistleblower comes from the Brennan world, it would be stunning. I think if he had connections to a Democratic candidate, it would be stunning. The only way you can fairly deal with this issue is to find out who the whistleblower is. No American can be accused of a crime based on an anonymous allegation. The whistleblower is foundational to what they're doing in the House, and the fact they don't want to call him tells you everything you need to know about the validity of the effort to impeach the president. Nikki Haley, meanwhile, has revealed that Chief of Staff John Kelly and former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson were seeking to run the country behind the president's back. This is fairly stunning stuff. Made in a new book and reported by the Washington Post, Haley's claims come as the former White House aides have told the House impeachment inquiry they were alarmed that Trump was making his own policy in Ukraine. But in fact, under the Constitution, it is the president who is the exclusive determiner of foreign policy. This just reveals the ignorance and general stupidity of the whole effort to impeach him. Haley's book, with all due respect, former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly sought to recruit her to work around and subvert Trump, but she refused. I commend her for that. Kelly and Tillerson confided in me when they resisted the president, they weren't being insubordinate, they were trying to save the country. How can you save the country by being insubordinate? They're responsible for their decisions. They thought they could substitute their policies for those of the president. Very, very bad. Kelly and Tillerson's arguments mirror those made by some of the witnesses that Democrats are calling to testify for the House Intel Committee. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, for example, said he didn't know if anything Trump said in the now infamous phone call was illegal, but he was concerned that Trump's views went outside the interagency consensus and reflected an unproductive narrative. In other words, this is a polity dispute, which is obviously not the basis for impeachment. Meanwhile, Alan Dershowitz has reinforced his point that the Democrats are trying to create crimes out of nothing. Right. There's no crime to be found amid the House Democrats' latest impeachment inquiry, which should frighten all Americans. Dershowitz observed, whether you're from New York or the middle of the country, you should be frightened by efforts to create crimes out of nothing. He told the Caps Roundtable per the Hill. Well, I spent the afternoon yesterday searching the federal criminal statutes from beginning to end. I couldn't find the crime. Dershowitz has long argued the justice system should be used to investigate the commission of crime, not actively seek investigation of Americans to find if a crime might have been committed. First, they made up collusion. Dershowitz, who's himself a Democrat, told the host about the impeachment-seeking Democrats, I searched the statute books. There's no crime of collusion with a foreign country. After that, they said obstruction of Congress. Americans should drop their animus of President Trump and realize the danger of what's transpiring from the always evolving effort to get him out of office. It's a desperate effort to find crimes committed by Trump. They're just making it up, and that means we are all in danger. Louisa, your thoughts?
Jim, this is how it works in the legal system. They make things up. They take something, okay, so they take a phone call, and then they create, they're like mystery novel writers. They spin it, and they spin a web, and they spin a web, and they build this house of cards off of this one fact that you start with. That's how the justice system works. I'm sorry, I don't think this is anything new, but at least he's exposing it.
Well, obviously, it's not how the justice system is supposed to work. Meanwhile, we have reports from way back in 2017 that the whistleblower's attorney, Mark Zaid, was talking about the coup having begun already January 2017. We know its roots extend earlier because Trump was elected president in 2016 and the planning was already taking place. Meanwhile, Eric Caramella's attorney, the coup has started, we will remove him. Mark Zaid posting, it's very scary, we will get rid of him, and this country is strong enough to survive even him and his supporters. We have to. This is such a blatant subversion of the Constitution, Louisa. Anyone associated with traitors to America like this guy deserves condemnation. Meanwhile, Trump himself has read tweets posted by the whistleblower's lawyer. A lawyer working with a supposed whistleblower in the effort to impeach Trump forgot to scrub his social media history. Trump's not pulling punches with the swamp critters, not at all. It's now become known he had specific plans to prevent Trump from completing his first term. From the beginning, it had weight to Trump's allegations that the claims against him were fabricated as part of a deliberate conspiracy to remove him. There can be no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Republicans break with Trump and Rand Paul on the whistleblower unmasking. This surprises me considerably and suggests they really haven't thought it through, because this is not really a bona fide whistleblower. Standing with President Trump Monday night, Senator Rand Paul called for the media to unmask the Ukrainian whistleblower and was cheered by rally-goers in Kentucky. Do your job and print his name. On Tuesday, he went further, threatening to reveal the name itself, but it's actually out there already. Many of Paul's colleagues, however, oppose exposing the identity of the person who helped launch the impeachment drive. Senior Senate Republicans are worried about the precedent would set, fearing government sources would be less likely to reveal wrongdoing in future presidencies. They also have a simpler concern not breaking the law. We should follow the law, and I believe the law protects whistleblowers. The problem in this case, Louisa, this guy's not a bona fide whistleblower. This is all contrived. He didn't have firsthand knowledge. They revised the whistleblower form to allow secondhand knowledge, rumors, speculation, hearsay, conjecture to be evasive, which was absurd. Meanwhile, Russia collusion clues all point back to John Brennan. How crazy has the last year been? You probably have to pause to remember who John Brennan is. There have been many false scandals this year. It's hard to remember things that date back as far as 2017, even actually earlier. For those who don't keep a close eye on politics, here's a reminder. He was the director of the CIA from 2013 to 2017. When Trump took office, he lost that job pretty quickly, but not quickly enough. Look at those dates again. Knowing Brennan was running the CIA in 2016, you're going to suspect he knew about the illegal spying on the Trump campaign. As you're as cynical as the rest of us, you'll assume he was a key figure in that spy campaign reality. There's no doubt about it, Louisa. Meanwhile, Joe DeVeneva and Gloria Tensing have appeared on Fox to discuss issues surrounding the ongoing investigation of the Inspector General Horowitz and the U.S. Attorney Durham. They're explaining that it's going to be devastating. It's going to ruin careers. When they appeared explaining about it, it's going to be worse than you can imagine. Louisa, I think the American people deserve to know the truth, once again, about their own history, and it looks as though the Inspector General is going to deliver a significant part of it.
Jim, I'm unmuted. It is because, of course, we had crimes against children listed on that IG report, which is what Horowitz had asked Huber to investigate, was the Clinton Foundation. It's going to shock people. But you're saying that who's invested. One of the reasons why this came about was, this whole Russian collusion, this fake dossier. Who was investigating the investigators, right? Who is overseeing the investigators to make sure they're honest and they're doing the right thing? This is exactly what happens in the judiciary. When you have a court system, if you complain about that, or if you try to address for grievance regarding that, you become targeted. So it's just how it is. It's a microcosm of the macrocosm. But Jim, it is going to be damaging when they really find out what the Clinton Foundation has been doing. And he's right. They are correct in saying that there will be careers destroyed.
No doubt about it, Louisa. No doubt about it. Meanwhile, Democrats release, media repeat Cliff's notes of the impeachment transcript. This is embarrassingly bad. Democrats on the House Intel Committee have been releasing transcript of deposition with witnesses in the impeachment inquiry, along with abridged versions that highlight only what they want the public to know. The Cliff's Notes version download more quickly than the full transcripts, which are large and unwieldy files. So their abridged version, being shorter or arranged like legal briefs. Quotes are not provided in the order given, but in the order Democrats feel best helps them make the case for impeachment. Each quote is preceded by a bold-faced section that states the Democrats' own conclusion before the text itself appears. In other words, they're manufacturing the reporting on the hearing just as much as they have manufactured the charges. It begins with a highlighted quote on the cover, which is diplomat William Taylor's statement. He had a clear understanding that security assistance money would not come until the president of Ukraine committed to pursue the investigation. The claim of clear understanding was widely cited as evidence there was, in fact, a quid pro quo. On the other hand, the transcript omitted the key exchange between Taylor and Representative Z. Zeldin, in which Taylor admitted he had not talked with President Trump. His only source of information was the New York Times. How bad is that? Zeldin, what was the goal of requesting investigations into the 2016 election and the Burisma? Taylor, as I understand it from one of maybe the article in the New York Times about Giuliani's interest in Burisma, he describes, I think it quotes Giuliani, indicates he was interested in getting information on Vice President Biden that would be useful to Giuliani's client. I think that's what it said. So he's not even certain. Zeldin, and that's your inference that Giuliani's goal would be the president's goal? Taylor, yes. Your source is New York Times. Taylor, yes. So do you have any other source that the president's goal in making this request was anything other than the New York Times? Taylor, I have not talked to the president. I have no other information of what the president was thinking. The most important line, I have not talked to the president, does not appear in the Democrat short version. In addition, the Cliff Note leave out his admission that nobody in the Ukrainian government was aware of any suspension of aid, making a quid pro quo impossible. It also admits his acknowledgement that Trump's policy on Ukraine was an improvement on that of Barack Obama, who denied Ukraine lethal military aid, including the Javelin anti-tank missiles to be used against Russian aggression. That explains why the mainstream media and conservative media are reporting such different conclusions about Taylor's deposition. The mainstream rushed to press the Cliff Notes version, leaving out information that contradicted their position. Conservative media tend to read the full document, which meant they often respond more slowly, but reported more accurately. Meanwhile, most Americans have little or no trust in the impeachment process and would rather let voters decide in 2020. This is exactly right, Louisa. Let the voters decide. According to the survey, 73% of those polled has little or no trust in how the House impeachment inquiry has been conducted to date, while 59% say it would make more sense to wait until next year's election. The same poll found 44% of Americans think Trump should be impeached and removed from office. That's the hardcore of the Democratic Party supporting it. Even many who would like to impeach Trump seem to feel beating him at the polls, however, is a better strategy for ousting him from office. 71%, moreover, think it's unlikely the Senate would vote to remove Trump, which, as Nancy Pelosi warned, would simply empower Republicans after Democrats can't tank Trump for asking Ukraine to investigate whether Joe Biden and his son engage in quid pro quo to personally enrich themselves, which is easily provable. Just over half think it's a good idea for the House to conduct the inquiry, even if people have little trust in it. Those who approve of the job is doing rose to 42% from 41%. It's actually higher than that. Of those who approve, 62% can't think of anything he could do that would cause them to stop supporting him. Here's a situation where you have Biden boasting he's going to hold back $1 billion if they don't fire the prosecutor investigating my son or you don't get the money. Trump says Ukraine, you might want to look into that. And then you have Schiff, quid pro quo. It's this absurd. This political cartoon, Louisa, captures a situation. Exactly. Your thoughts? You're muted.
Here's another meme that does as well. What are the odds all four people who are opposing the president trying to impeach him all have children working for the Ukrainian gas company? I mean, you're absolutely right.
I know, you're absolutely right. Kerry, Pelosi, Romney, and Biden. You're absolutely right, Louisa. This is a self-interested self-protection by the Democrats who are behind this, and a Republican rhino, the disgusting creep who calls himself Mitt Romney. Very, very bad. Nice catch. Meanwhile, far left CNN loses viewers during impeachment crusade. The media are suffering over this, and not merely CNN. CNN and Fox have remained, MSNBC and Fox have remained fairly steady, which shows Americans are just not into this whole impeachment hoax. The media's fanatical crusade to remove Trump from office is mostly based on ideology. The corporate media, run by far-left activists who hate Trump, have still not come to terms with his 2016 victory. We're certain the Russian collusion hoax would end him. But another reason the media is so closely colliding to overturn the election includes CNN and MSNBC's ratings. In the wake of special counsel Robert Mueller debunking their 3-year Russia collusion hoax, CNN and MSNBC are suffering through humiliating Russian ratings and are desperate for anything to boost viewership numbers. It's really bad. To ensure there was no accidental cherry picking, I'm deliberately comparing last week's cable news with the entire month of October, just in case there was a hurricane or mass shooting during the same week. October 2018, Fox, nearly 3 million, MSNBC 1.5, CNN less than 1 million. Week of 28, Fox 2.7 about, MSNBC 1.8, CNN 880,000. October, Fox 1.7 million, MSNBC less than 1 million, CNN less than 700,000, week of October 28. Fox 1.5 million plus, MSNBC slightly over 1 million, CNN down below 665,000. As you can see, MSNBC's primetime and total day viewership are a little higher, but negligibly so. CNN's primetime viewership and total day, however, is actually lower, while Fox remains pretty much the same. How is it possible the same week the U.S. House voted to focus on impeachment inquiry? What confirms what I've suspected, but since my evidence is anecdotal, I've kept it to myself. This is Nolte, the author here, is a very smart guy. Over the years, I've stayed in regular touch with my own focus group, a half dozen people who do not know they're part of my focus group, but people I qualify as swing voters. Most reluctantly voted for Trump in 2016. A couple didn't, but considered it. What I find most informative, however, is how they run hot and cold on Trump. Sometimes they like him, other times they can't stand all the unnecessary drama he creates. For example, they all hated him telling the squad to go back to their own countries, but they love the contempt he heaps on the media. 4 of them have said they might support Joe Biden if he wins the nomination. The other 2 say they definitely will. None of them, not a single one, is talking about impeachment. In fact, no one, whether I know them or not, no one in any restaurant, in any checkout line, in any waiting room, in any place, anywhere I've overheard discuss impeachment. It's just not on the minds of everyday Americans. And not only is CNN losing, but the New York Times is also failing. Their stock plunges after the company reported continuing declines in advertising. The company reported this week that ad revenues for its print version was down 9.7% year over year, and down 17.2% for its digital version. Print advertising fell 7.9%, digital fell 5.4%. The company also reported a jump in subscribers to 4 million only, and 4.9 total subscribers, with the stock of the company has plunged as much as 7%. Finishing the session down about 4%, given this news. On its earnings call, the company pivoted from advertising to its new partnership with Facebook News. But look at this stunning drop here in advertising, just fascinating. CEO Mark Thompson commented, more significant than the immediate financial benefits of the agreement is its strategic significance. We previously received small payments for participation in various experiments and innovation, but Facebook News is different because this is the first time a Silicon Valley major has recognized the value of Times journalism to its platform. Really, it's a convergence of propaganda outlets to work for their mutual goal of defeating Donald Trump in 2016, Louisa. It's all completely embarrassing and obvious when you understand the politics of the situation.
Yeah, am I muted? No.
Nope.
It's a conspiracy. It's a real conspiracy, and these reports are going to highlight what the conspiracy was, and even deeper levels of treason within our government. So get ready, folks. It's coming.
I think you got it right, Louisa.
Jim, we're matching again. We did
Yeah.
not, just so our viewers know, Jim and I did not coordinate this on the phone in advance, but it just happens this way.
Here's Mitch McConnell speaking to reality. Impeachment trial would not lead to a removal. Democrats are jazzed up about EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland modifying his testimony before the House Intel Committee. Headlines all over the place. Shout to the public. He confirmed a quid pro quo, putting Trump presidency in jeopardy. He's trapped, we've heard. He's got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, we're told. It's all over but the shouting, put a fork in him, etc. We haven't heard the Democrats and the media so certain of Trump's impending downfall since, gosh, it's been at least a month. Throwing cold water on their excitement with Senate Majority Mitch McConnell assured reporters Tuesday nothing had changed as far as Republicans in the Senate were concerned. Asked what would happen if the Senate were to hold a Trump impeachment trial today, he was implacable. I will say I'm pretty sure how it's likely to end, McConnell said. If it were today, I don't think there's any question it would not lead to a removal. So the question is, how long does the Senate want to take? How long do the presidential candidates want to be here on the floor of the Senate instead of in Iowa and New Hampshire? In other words, McConnell is saying that when and if the House sends its party line impeachment articles over to the Senate, he's going to put the trial on fast track, preside over the inevitable acquittal within a week's time, and then get back on the campaign trail. Put another way, he's saying, let's get this over with, Pelosi. There's nothing in the fantasy world in which your silly push to undo 2016 is going to get past me, really, against over the Republicans in the Senate. Far from convincing Senate Republicans to change their minds, the House Democrats may have actually warmed them up for a political firefight on Capitol Hill. The Washington Post reports, among a group of Trump allies inside and outside Congress, there's intense and growing interest in countering the House impeachment inquiry with their own scrutiny of Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings in Ukraine and China. Because his father was vice president at the time, these allies believe it could be a way of explaining why Trump pressed Ukrainian President Zelensky on July 25th to look into the Bidens. This would be epic. Go ahead, pass your little impeachment, Nancy. When it comes to our side of the Capitol, we'll turn it into the Joe Biden show and crush your only viable 2020 contender for all the country to watch. Trump has finally taught these Republicans how to fight back against Democrat smear tactic, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. By the end of the circus, Nancy Pelosi is going to be sorry she ever mentioned the word Ukraine to the American people. Meanwhile, a new poll of 2020 swing states has Democrats sounding the alarm. The New York Times and Siena College just released a new poll of the states that likely decide the 2020 presidential elections, and the numbers have Democrats sounding the alarm. The poll shows Trump trailing barely behind Biden by a couple of points in the battleground states. He's ahead of Elizabeth Warren in a virtual tie with Bernie Sanders. The poll has some Democrat and never Trump pundits practically begging voters to choose Biden as the nominee. They know a progressive candidate like Sanders or Warren can spell electoral doom. Despite low national approval ratings and the specter of impeachment, President Trump remains highly competitive in the background states likeliest to decide his reelection, according to new surveys from the New York Times Upshot and Siena College, the Times reports. The dismay practically leaking from the newsprint. The polls confirmed what we've thought for a long time. If Democrats have the slightest prayer of winning, it will be Biden or bust. America, despite what you may believe after spending an inordinate amount of time reading Twitter and perusing Reddit, is nowhere near close to being ready for a socialist president. And while Warren describes herself as a capitalist, her Medicare for All plan is the most expensive and expensive socialist program ever introduced by a major presidential candidate. She would be crushed. Sanders could be crushed. It's hard to imagine any of the losers on the stage actually winning the nomination. Here's Nolte, the same author, going into greater detail why the media want Trump impeached. Among likely voters, Trump's losing by only 2 points to quid pro quo Joe Biden, Florida, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Michigan. Slow Joe is only up by a single point. Trump leads in North Carolina by 2. Bernie only beats Trump in one of those states, Michigan, by 3. They're tied in Wisconsin. Trump beat Bernie by 4. In Arizona and North Carolina, by 1 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Florida. As far as the Democratic front runner, Warren, Trump leads from 2 to 4 in all those states except Arizona, where they're tied. If that's not scary enough, in the latest polling, Trump is winning Nevada, a state he lost in 2016. In other words, if Bernie or the fake Indian, currently the favorite, win the nomination, at least according to these polls, Trump wins the Electoral College in a second term. As far as Biden, the great slight hope, who is considered Trump's most formidable opponent, well, here's why the fake media are terrified and push for Trump's impeachment and removal. Like the rest of the media, they know these 4 things for certain. Polling has historically underestimated Trump's strength by about 5 points. Trump is doing remarkably well in the middle of impeachment hearings that will almost certainly end with equivalent vindication, if not in the House, then in the Senate. While Biden might have the best shot at stopping Trump, everyone knows that's only on paper. Biden is a terrible campaigner. The fact that his son looted at least 3 foreign countries we know of, is a huge liability Trump will exploit to the whole point. You know, Joe is old, and I don't mean in years, but physically and mentally, and he was not all that together as a younger man. If Biden wins the nomination, Trump will work that frail old man into the ground during the general election. Trump deliberately and effectively exhausted Hillary Clinton, and he plans to do it again. Most importantly, Trump is not out campaigning now, not out on the trail talking about his record as legitimate accomplishments. He's not out contrasting himself with his far-left opponent and doing what he does best, selling himself, his vision, his ideas, his common sense, his fearlessness, his love for America, and his ridiculously appealing battle cry of one man versus the swamp that gave you endless wars, income stagnation, and open borders. The media are especially freaked out because they know history is on Trump's side. Meanwhile, despite constant liberal media attacks, Trump's approval rate hits 50%, 3 points higher than Obama at the same point in his presidency. President Obama's approval rating at the same time was 47%, 3 points behind Trump's numbers now. Barack Obama had a cakewalk with the media. In August, pollster John McLaughlin reported his polling show Americans want Trump reelected by a 51 to 38 point margin. Louisa, looking very, very good for Trump.
Well, look, I mean, the 2020 election is really about socialism versus patriotism. You know, it's not, this is what we're seeing, Jim, is the unfolding. It's the undoing of our 2-party political system, because we can clearly see that the Democrats have been replaced by a almost anti-life force. I mean, they're so far left. They're so far left, no one can reach them. And that's, you know, that's never gonna, they have no chance in hell. I'm sorry to say it that way, but that's just my opinion. I don't think they have a chance in hell to win the election.
Well, what they have is Google manipulating the election. You have electoral fraud. You have the theft of the election. That is the looming prospect. That's the only way, in my judgment, the Democrats could win this election.
And let me show you how. Let me show you what little tricks they're pulling in order to accomplish this, okay? So for the past week, the GoldFish Report has been locked. We've been locked out of the account on Facebook. And I'm going to show you why. And I have to just interrupt for 1 second, Jim, because this is, our viewers didn't know what was happening, and this is important for our viewers to know this. I'm just going to screen share. I was locked out of the account for a post of a White House press release. This press release talked about the death of al-Baghdadi. I'm going to screen share this real quick. And I want to show you what the reason was that this is how they're going to succeed, okay, at trying to alter, not just through algorithms, but BS like this. Your post goes against our community standards on dangerous individuals and organizations. Look, it's a White House. I copied and pasted this right.
A White House press release violates their standards or community standards. Louisa, how outrageous is that? How completely, that's not just absurd, that's completely obscene.
Jim, this is another way that they're targeting individuals that do cover the president. And I contacted the Senate Judiciary Committee and I told them this. I sent this to them, and I sent the other messages. This isn't the first time that I posted a news release from the Office of the Press Secretary, exactly as it is, and I was locked out. I was not locked out. I was blocked from posting. But this time I was completely locked out of the account, and for almost 5 days, I could not access my GoldFish Report news page. So for viewers who know that, this is just another tactic, Jim. They're going after individuals like myself, so that, even on Veterans Day, I could not repost. I can't post to any of the groups that I belong to, which is what you're supposed to do. Aren't you supposed to share information on Facebook? Isn't that what they want? But the minute you start sharing this to your other groups, they say, oh, we're blocking you because you violated our spam policy. That's how they get around it.
Got it. Good point. Gun owners laugh out loud at idea of mandatory buybacks in MSNBC focus group. In an NBC focus group that aired Thursday, gun owners audibly laughed when asked if they thought mandatory gun buybacks were a good idea. Let me ask you about a proposal that's been floated out there by a presidential candidate or more about gun buybacks. MSNBC Live host Ali Velshi said before bluntly asking who thinks that's a good idea. Some in the group smirked, several laughed out loud, and one gentleman quipped, I bought mine for $1 million, so if they're willing to pay that. The panel consisted of 8 gun owners from southeast Wisconsin, all with distinct occupations and political persuasions and varying numbers of guns owned. One panelist owned 1, another owned more than 100. On several issues related to gun regulation, there was some disagreement and debate. But on the issue of gun buybacks, unanimous skepticism and derision. While gun buyback programs have remained a common argument among gun control advocates who desire to reduce the number of firearms owned by civilians, the proposal became a central issue this year when failed Democratic presidential candidate and former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke began vocally arguing for mandatory gun buybacks during his campaign. Later in the discussion, some of the panelists also called out companies like Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods for virtue signaling and removing guns from their stores. Walmart stopped selling them. You can go to Fleet Farm. It's the same people that want to get them and will get them. They're still going to get them. Carol Reuter, a nursing home activities director, said. So now this is their way out to say they can be the hero. We are going to get rid of all this stuff. Well, they were probably looking for a way to get rid of them anyway, another panelist added. They still sell alcohol, which kills as many people, another panelist concluded, as others scoffed in agreement. In the final seconds of the video, retired police officer Gregory Phillips described protecting the Second Amendment as his #1 issue for the upcoming presidential election. Don't mess with my right to protect my family by trying to take away my firearms, he said resolutely. Here we have Beto, and I have no doubt this precipitated his disappearance from the candidates list. Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government. We're not going to allow them to stay on our streets, to show up in our communities to be used against them. Beto O'Rourke. I was asked to address how I'd address people's fears that will take away their assault rifles. I want to be clear. That's exactly what we're going to do. Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell their assault weapons, all of them. Not a chance. The reasons are enormous, from the role of Americans as citizen soldiers to home defense to maintaining order, deal with marauding gangs or invading armies, personal defense. Gun-free zones are the areas where crime runs most rampant. Chicago is the obvious case. When guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. We know worldwide. Gun ownership and homicide rates are inversely related. Look at North America, the US and Canada, high gun ownership, low homicide rate. Look at Brazil, low gun ownership, high homicide rate. Look at Africa, low gun ownership, high homicide rate. Look at Russia, low gun ownership, high homicide rate. They got it all backwards. They don't know what they're talking about. And perhaps I will be most remembered for the following observation. When they come for our guns, the time has come to use them. Louisa.
I agree, Jim. I agree, but it almost seems like a skit from Mad Television, a comedy skit. It's like he says, "How do I address the fears of people about taking away their guns?" By saying, "Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do." Addressing your fear is, I mean, it's like it's got to be Mad Television.
Louisa, it was a moment of clarity. I think that is when the Democrats, for a certainty, lost the election.
Absolutely, Jim. No question about it.
I mean, there turn out to be multiple sufficient conditions, but that's one of them. I think that's going to resonate in the minds of every American who understands the importance of guns, including for defensive purposes, where reports have shown that there are between 500,000, 500,000, and 3 million defensive use of guns by Americans every year, saving on the average 200,000 American lives. You could take all the fake school shootings, treat them as real, add up the numbers, they don't come up to 1% of that. We're talking about saving 200,000 lives every year, Louisa.
Yeah, Jim. I'm still yet to do my bullet points on the Second Amendment. I haven't gotten to that yet. I'm working on it.
Meanwhile, the Republican who refused to concede defeat in Kentucky's governor race calls for a statewide recanvassing to lead to a full-scale recount after he claimed election irregularities, and this is 100% correct. Kentucky's Republican Governor Matt Bevin asked state election authorities to recheck the final tallies in every voting machine. The recanvass, as it's called, has never reversed the result of an election in the bluegrass state. Andy Bishar ended Tuesday night 5,189 votes ahead of Bevin. There really are significant irregularities, however, in particular. Look at this, Jim Stone. The recent election thefts in Virginia and Kentucky proved they'll steal it in 2020. GOP Attorney General got 823,000 votes. The GOP Agriculture Commissioner got 821,000 votes. The GOP Treasurer got 855,000 votes. How can the GOP governor then get only 704,000 votes and get beaten by the Democrat who got 708? That's a little Soros magic that needs to be explained. You can't have the down ticket Republican candidates getting vastly larger, in excess of 100,000 more votes than the Republican GOP candidate at the top of the ticket, Louisa. Jim Stone has it right. Some Kentucky counties use vote tallying machines that don't produce a paper trail, leaving them vulnerable to tampering. Newer computerized systems in other parts of the state were shown last year to be easy for hackers to penetrate. It can be done in 5 minutes. You can change the totals. Meanwhile, in Virginia, Governor Northam confirms Virginia already working on gun confiscation now that Democrats are in control. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam of blackface fame posted this week his party is ready to implement an array of gun control measures in the Commonwealth now that Democrats control all 3 branches of government. And his administration is already working on a plan for confiscating so-called assault weapons from law-abiding gun owners. I'm telling you right now, Louisa, we may have the American Civil War break out in Virginia. And asked directly about whether he supports confiscating assault weapons from gun owners, he replied, "That's something I'm working on with the Secretary of Public Safety. I'll work with the gun violence activists. We'll work on that. I don't have a definite plan today." On Tuesday, Virginia voters have Democrats total control of the Commonwealth General Assembly, flipping both the House and the Senate to red. I'm very suspicious, Louisa. The CNBC reported every town for gun safety, a gun advocacy group largely bankrolled by billionaire Michael Bloomberg, spent $2.5 million this year to influence voters in Virginia. Approximately 300,000 by the NRA, which has its headquarters in Fairfax, Virginia. Remember, the CI is located there. Meanwhile, Bevin will not concede Louisiana, and Trump is being a beta cuck. Bevin is citing numerous serious irregularities in the election, which saw him lose by less than 0.5%, and Trump is telling him he did well. I think he means Kentucky, not Louisiana. Either Trump is ignorant to the ends of the world or he's part of the problem. We had people posting to Twitter how they shredded Republican ballots and laughed about them. Yet nothing's getting done, and obvious irregularities are being ignored even by Trump. That's a big problem. You realize that if the system is so corrupt, nothing gets done about this, and as a result, your kid gets converted to trans, after being knocked down 3 notches by a tainted vaccine and then gets brainwashed to useless traitor status via an education system. There's only one answer to it, right? Obviously, voting is not the only way out of this. And look how Democrats are signing voters up at a cemetery, and he tells Torrance, if I die, don't let me vote Democrat. Love it, Louisa.
That's right.
I think Trump does need to take a stronger stand about this, Louisa. There are lots of signs of foul play here.
Yeah, you know, Jim, I'm looking for the tweet right now that I saw and I reposted. I'm pretty sure I reposted this. Michael Bloomberg. Look, I don't know if this is real. I saw one report on it so far. Michael Bloomberg offered the quid pro quo. Okay, he offered Trump what, multi-billions of dollars.
I think that was a parody, Louisa.
It was that a parody? Okay, I didn't see. Well, hey, you know, I wouldn't be surprised.
They're just saying, you know, what we need is another white billionaire running, you know, for president. You know, a lot of people think Bloomberg is a good guy, but I'm telling you, he's not going to win the support of the Democrats. In other words, they have been so wound up with their own identity politics that running Bloomberg is going to disaffect a large segment, virtually the progressive base of the Democratic Party. Yeah. It's not a winning strategy for the Democrats. Meanwhile, ABC News anchor caught on mic saying the network quashed the Jeffrey Epstein story. This is rather stunning, Louisa. Yep. ABC News anchor Amy Rohrbach was caught on camera slamming her network for allegedly sitting on the Epstein story for 3 years. In a video clip released by Project Veritas, Rohrbach is caught on a hot mic complaining to colleagues that her Epstein story was suppressed by network executives. She said she'd spoken to Virginia Roberts. Now Virginia Roberts Guthrie alleges Epstein used her as a sex slave and trafficked her to his powerful friends, including Britain's Prince Andrew. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air, Rohrbach says on camera. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegation about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. She went on to say the network was afraid that writing the story would prevent interviews with Kate Middleton and with Prince William. It was unbelievable what we had. Bill Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on to no avail. Now it's all coming out and it's like these are new revelations. Meanwhile, James O'Keefe breaking. ABC News anchor Rohrbach caught on hot mic in August disgustingly exposing network's decision to strategically spike bombshell investigation into Jeffrey Epstein over 3 years ago. Who killed the story? ABC, NBC, and CBS appear to have run cover for the world's most powerful rape rings. NBC, ABC, CBS News have all appeared to run for some of the cover for some of the world's most powerful rape rings. The allegation run for killing entire stories on alleged rape offenders, shutting down reports of sexual assault to protect themselves, and firing an employee who might have tried to hold the networks accountable. All these accusations have come in 2019. All the outlets have denied the various reports or declined to comment. ABC, NBC, CBS have now all appear to run cover for some of the world's most powerful rape rings, allegedly killing stories and firing employees who tried to expose the outlets. All at 3 of America's biggest networks. These outlets have each become embroiled in controversy in 2019 following multiple separate reports that have played a part in covering up some of the world's most powerful rape and pedophile rings. The allegations range from killing entire stories, outing disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, shutting down an interview detailing accusations against alleged child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and firing an employee who might have tried to hold an outlet responsible. Meanwhile, NBC News promotes convenience of getting a microchip in your hand. This is stunning too. NBC News celebrated the prospect of 1 million people being microchips implanted in their hand as a likely future outcome. The segment is introduced by pointing out that people who have taken the chip do not need to carry keys, ID, credit cards, or money. It points out that embedding a microchip in humans has long been a feature of the dystopian fiction like Black Mirror, but that in Sweden, the microchips are already here. The piece also celebrates how the same countless contactless technology has made cash pretty much obsolete in Sweden. Unbelievable, Louisa. They're promoting this monstrosity of microchipping
Yeah.
citizens.
This is part of the agenda, the United Nations 2012 agenda, which now became the 2030 agenda. And if you're not familiar with what that is, you should look it up. A lot of people do report on this, and it is about depopulation. It is about mass control of people. It's about look, we had Aaron Russo, who did an interview with Alex Jones many years ago, before he died, before Russo died, regarding what the agenda was for the New World Order. This is the New World Order agenda. Nobody knew what they were talking about then. They didn't disclose what the agenda was, but it's been leaked out, and now we can see. And this is about controlling people. And I'll tell you, if they don't like what you're doing, they just shut you off. So you can't buy money, you can't buy food, you can't buy heat, you can't buy gas for your car, you can't live your life. I mean, in a sense, they do that now with the court system, but now they can do this with a chip, and this is very dangerous, folks. This is really this whole transhumanist cult that's going on across the world here. Sad to say.
I think you got it right, Louisa. Meanwhile, women killed in a Mexican cartel murder had alleged ties to a sex cult. This is all rather bizarre.
Oh.
9 women and children slaughtered in Mexico were part of a Mormon community with ties to an alleged sex cult called Nixon. The outpost Mormon community in Mexico were underlings of Nixon leader Keith Rainier, recruited young women to work as nannies in an upstate New York compound run by the accused cult, suggesting, at least in part, the jobs would get the girls away from their home region's drug violence, according to a man hired by Rainier to produce a documentary about the group. The 3 moms and 6 kids killed in Monday's violence in Sonora are believed to have been victims of a drug cartel, which may have mistaken the drug caravan of 3 SUVs for rivals. The filmmaker working with Rainier at the time, Mark Vicente, told the online magazine Slate the documentary ultimately became a recruiting video for Nixon, which purported to be a self-help group, but morphed into what Feds call a cult that sexually, physically, and emotionally abuses its mainly female followers. The film included an interview with Julian LeBaron, who identified himself as the cousin of one of the moms killed Monday, who's the leader of the Mexico Mormon community. LeBaron's brother was kidnapped by a local drug cartel in 2009, and the family defiantly refused to pay ransom. The cartel eventually released him. Meanwhile, this is all pretty bizarre. A suspect holding 2 bound and tied hostages in a vehicle has been arrested in the massacre of 9 U.S. citizens, 3 moms and 6 children at the hands of a drug cartel. The unidentified suspect, who was found Tuesday in the town of Agua Prieta, which borders Arizona, also was in possession of 4 assault rifles, ammunition, and several large vehicles, including a bulletproof SUV, according to the Agency for Criminal Investigation for the state of Sonora. We're waiting for more intelligence to issue an official statement. The Attorney General of the state of Chihuahua told Mexicans Imaging Radio. The attackers may have mistaken the doomed group's SUVs for those of a rival gang, as the 3 families from a Mormon community were slaughtered. The victims, dual U.S.-Mexican citizens, were apparently members of a fundamentalist sect separate from the mainstream Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 8 children, some just infants, survived the carnage by hiding in the brush, with some walking several miles to seek help despite injuries. Pinishi Espejel said he believed the Los Jaguars cartel, an offshoot of the Sinaloa cartel, may be responsible for the atrocity. These very cartels of Sinaloa, after the arrest of Guzman El Chapo, have suffered fragmentation. They have been growing near the border with the United States. They're heavily involved in trafficking immigrants into the U.S. and drug trafficking as well. It's very serious stuff. Meanwhile, a huge illegal opioid hole was found in Ohio. So huge, authorities called it chemical warfare. Ohio law enforcement agencies have revealed a huge drug bust in which over 20 kilograms, 440 pounds, 44 pounds of suspected fentanyl, an addictive opioid more dangerous than heroin, was seized, along with 30,000 cash and 3 guns. 20 kilograms of fentanyl is enough to kill the entire population of Ohio many times over, said Vance Calendar, Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent in charge for Michigan and Ohio. The Ohio Attorney General described the quantity of fentanyl as amounting to chemical warfare and a weapon of mass destruction. 3 men, all aged in their 30s and from Dayton, were arrested in connection with a bust and are facing drug and firearm charges. According to data compiled by the CDC, 2 out of 3 overdose deaths in America involve an opioid, and the number of opioid-related deaths has increased nearly 6 times in the 2 decades before 2019. Louisa, any thoughts?
Well, I did report about this last week with regard to the when we were talking about the UN presence in Salt Lake, Utah, and that they were, renting this facility that was with public funds, and then they had it was just a conference. No one expected it to become an international, UN compound. Okay, whatever, but still, it's the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, were the ones who sponsored that there, and they were also passing legislation within Salt Lake Town Council in favor of UN agendas. So, but I did mention that there was something involved with the trafficking. It's called NXIVM, the cult, and they were on trial up in New York State, and a lot
that's also medication, is it not? NXIVM for
for
digestion or whatever. I think my wife even takes it.
Right, agita, whatever, and that's the Yiddish word for that. And so a lot of facts came out from that case, and a lot of people, they revealed a lot of low-hanging fruit, which is when they went and got Weinstein and Epstein, interestingly enough. So it kind of led to that. But there were reports, you're absolutely correct in your reporting, Jim, regarding the connections there.
Very good, Louisa. Meanwhile, Pentagon claims revenue from Syrian oil will go to the Kurds, not to the U.S. A Pentagon spokesman told reporters Thursday that while the U.S. continues to expand its presence in and around East Syria with the name of protecting and controlling oil fields, the U.S. won't be keeping the money. The revenue from this is not going to the U.S., this is going to the SDF, he said, suggesting the U.S.-backed Kurds will get the money. That's still entirely speculative, however, because no U.S. company has expressed any willingness to extract the oil in the first place. This looks to me like damage control, Louisa. It was so bad sending those tanks in, having photographs of them around the oil fields, that they're trying to recuperate some ground. Meanwhile, Iran is winning the strategic struggle for influence, even as the U.S. cripples its economy. A new report has confirmed that some analysts have been saying for some time Iran is winning the regional struggle for strategic influence. A 217-page report released by the London-based Institute for Strategic Studies entitled Iran's Networks of Influence in the Middle East details Iran's use of proxy forces and networks throughout the region and the effects and benefits of its minimum output foreign policy strategy. It's probably worth mentioning at this point that H.R. McMaster, Trump's former national security advisor, was once an employee of the IISS, International Institute for Strategic Studies, as was James Steinberg, a former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State. Furthermore, at the end of 2016, The Guardian revealed that the organization had received 25 million pounds, $32 million from the Iranian royal family. Apparently, almost half of its total income has come from Bahrain. Iran and Bahrain aren't exactly close friends. In other words, suggesting the financing here would be anti-Iranian. Notwithstanding the potential motives and bias of the Institute, the report definitely arrives at some interesting conclusions. The Islamic Republic of Iran has tipped the balance of effective force in the Middle East in its favor, the report concludes. Here's the crazy part. Iran is, and has been for years, completely pummeled to the ground by U.S.-imposed sanctions. Many commentators have for some time now been predicting an impending collapse of the Iranian economy. On top of that, likely because of this fact, Iran's military budget has consistently been low, especially compared with the US or any of Washington's major allies. This flies completely in the face of allegations that Iran is a regional aggressor and the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. With what money? But don't let this get in the way of a good story. According to the US Defense Department's annual review, Iran's military doctrine is defensive. It is designed to deter an attack, survive an initial strike, retaliate against an aggressor, enforce a diplomatic solution to hostilities while avoiding any concessions that challenge its core interests, which every American needs to understand. This is not coming from a biased source. This is coming from the US Department of Defense, that Iran's posture is defensive. In other words, despite being under constant threat of war, whether from the US, Israel, or Saudi Arabia, Iran is not looking for a fight. It maintains a much lower military expenditure than Saudi Arabia, Israel, and especially Washington. Yet, as the recent Institute report notes, it has emerged from the rubble of a war-torn Middle East region as a victor. As Foreign Affairs, the Council on Foreign Relations magazine explained in a recent article, Iran now enters its second year under maximum pressure, strikingly confident in its economic stability and regional position. This is completely fascinating. According to the report, Iran's been winning the regional geopolitical struggle for influence by developing asymmetric warfare, such as swarm tactics, drones, and cyber attacks. It's relied upon the Quds arm of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to increase its operations throughout the Middle East, as well as to provide training, support, and weapons to other actors allied with Iran. The report also noted Iran's relationship with Hezbollah, its role in the conflicts in Iran, Iraq, and Syria, as well as its role alleged in Yemen. As my Kung Fu instructor once told me, you serve yourself in a confrontation best by using minimum input for maximum gain. Winning the lottery doesn't entail that you told them to go to a casino and put all your money down on your first gamble. Just because you have it doesn't mean you have to expend it. In comparison, Saudi Arabia has expended time, effort, billions of dollars, lives of many innocent civilians waging a genocidal war in Yemen and still losing. As Bloomberg once explained, Saudi Arabia has better weapons than its enemies in Yemen. No surprise in a war that pits one of the richest Arab countries against the poorest, and still the Saudis are struggling to impose their will. Not only is it losing a war, it's also losing an economic battle. At the beginning of the conflict, Reuters estimated the war would cost Saudi Arabia about $175 million a month. However, by the end of the first year, the kingdom had increased its defense spending by $5.3 billion. This trend has continued right throughout the conflict. At the end of 2016, Saudi Arabia had announced a projected increase of 6.7% in defense spending for 2017, bringing its total budget to around $50.8 billion. Meanwhile, Iran finds a new oil field with over 15 billion barrels announced by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. He is announcing the discovery of a new oil field with over 50 billion barrels of crude in the country's south. I am telling the White House that the days when you sanction the sale of Iranian oil and pressure our nation, the country's dear workers and engineers were able to discover 53 billion barrels of oil in a big field. Meanwhile, the U.S. claims that Iran is preparing a nuclear outbreak. This is all just pure propaganda. Iran restarted enrichment at the underground Fordo site overnight on Wednesday. That's correct. Preparing a nuclear breakout within the internet, which the international community must unite against, according to the U.S. The concept of a nuclear breakout has always been ill-defined, but rests on the notion that at some point Iran would have such a substantial civilian nuclear program, it would be tantamount to an irreversible military program. Though it's not clear that that's even theoretically possible. In other words, this is bullshit, as nations like Canada and Japan have never been accused of approaching a breakout despite huge nuclear programs. Attaching the label to Iran has been popular with U.S. hawks in Israel. Louisa, this is just embarrassingly bad. The propaganda onslaught against Iran continues unabated.
It's the deep state within Iran, Jim, by the way. And I also, I'll pass at that.
Okay. Meanwhile, Robert Steele has published a brilliant blog, Leonard Posner attempting to delete and make invisible all posts critical of the flawed legal finding in the Sandy Hook case. Here's what he wrote. A request under the name of Leonard Posner, the plaintiff in that case, was submitted to Google asking it to de-index these criticisms, which aren't themselves covered by the judgment. Robert Steele. I believe the Posner versus Fetz case in Wisconsin, where Fetz's rights were clearly violated by a summary judgment when facts were in dispute, will go to the U.S. Supreme Court and become a seminal First Amendment case within the Trump administration push to not only disclose 9/11 truth, but the truth about other false flags and active shooters being used to justify a police state, mass surveillance, and the confiscation of all guns from law-abiding patriots. That someone, we cannot be certain it was Posner, but legal discovery to Google could confirm that it was, would seek to de-index materials that are lawfully critical of a Catholic judge who in all probability cut a deal with a plaintiff's attorney before the fact, and if he did is therefore impeachable and removable from the court, suggests that Posner has either lost his mind and needs full psychiatric examination as part of the next evolution in this case, or is operating in collusion with a federal emergency management agency, as well as Mossad and the Anti-Defamation League, the latter being the lead Zionist censor and manipulator of information embedded in Amazon, Facebook, Google, Meetup, Twitter, and YouTube, among others. As a side note, in praise of Google, it has been my experience that they will de-index via legal remove only when material has actually been deleted. As with all organizations, there is evil, search manipulation, and good. The immunity of government from prosecution and discovery is central to this case, as conservative judges are added to the U.S. Supreme Court. I anticipate a restored balance and improved options for citizens to demand disclosure that reveals professional misconduct as well as criminal misconduct on the part of local, state, and federal authorities. As my colleague William Benny has pointed out, it's already illegal to classify information in order to cover up crimes, and the declassification of information related to the commission of crimes is mandatory. The fact that the judge summarily dismissed all evidence without a jury being called in and evidently blocked all discovery that would have easily led to the dismissal with prejudice of the Posner complaint suggests to me the judge may be operating under a national security warrant and elements of the U.S. government, possibly without the knowledge of their agency leadership, and certainly without the knowledge of the Attorney General or the President, are obstructing justice. My affidavit in support of Dr. James Fetzer is below. Meanwhile, Eugene Vocal attempt to banish posts critical of the Sandy Hook hoax libel judgment. This is my legal defense fund blog at jamesfetzer.com, which has been frozen. A request under the name of Leonard Posner, the plaintiff in the case, was submitted to Google asking it to de-index these criticisms, which aren't themselves covered by the judgment. Lenny Posner, the father of a boy, Leonard Posner, killed in the Sandy Hook, who sued James Fetzer and Mike Palachuk, who co-wrote, wrong, of course, edited the book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook. The book had claimed, among other things, that Noah Posner's death certificate is a fake, which we have proven on a dozen or more grounds. Mr. Posner sent her a death certificate, which turned out to be a fabrication. As many Sandy Hook researchers are aware, the very document Posner circulated in 2014, with its inconsistent tones, fonts, and clear digital manipulation, was clearly a forgery. Posner said this libeled him, and in June, a Wisconsin judge agreed and granted Posner's summary judgment on liability last month. The jury awarded Posner $450,000 in damages. Since then, there have been 2 requests submitted to Google under Leonard Posner's name, asking Google to de-index pages that contain copies of the libelous book, and Google has gone along with those requests. Google generally does remove from its indexes links to material a court has found to be libelous, so Google searches for such material no longer find it. But a week and a half ago, another request came into Google, and this request sought to de-index material that simply discusses the case and criticizes the court decision, such as various copies of the legal lynching of a truth seeker, Jim Fetzer's Stalinist-style show trial, and Sandy Hook and the murder of the First Amendment. Of course, judgment, of course, didn't find these items posted in response to the judgment to be libelous, and it offers no basis for Google to de-index them. As best I can tell, Google didn't de-index his index, but it gets such overbroad de-indexing requests office and generally sees through them. But I thought it was worth noting that there indeed has been an attempt to essentially banish these criticisms from the searchable internet. On Monday, I emailed Posner and his lawyer, with whom I had corresponded before, to confirm that the de-indexing request submitted under Posner's name indeed came from him. I have not gotten a response so far, but I have no reason it came from any source other than Posner or his associates. Editor's note. The Legal Defense Fund website, jamesfetzer.com, which set off like a rocket, has been frozen since 10/29/2019. Only one party known to the defendant as a motive, the means, and the opportunity. Here you see how it was frozen. I believe they've allowed one more contribution to appear, but that was just to try to debunk the fact that it's frozen. There should have been 100 more at least by this point. I've made so many talks about it. And meanwhile, of course, Amazon has not only banned the book Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, but 5 other books that blow apart these phony state events. If you want to know what's really going on, go to moonrockbooks.com and pick them up before we're put completely out of business. The American people are entitled to know the truth about their own history, Louisa.
Hey, and they better do it soon. If they want to give these out as Christmas gifts, they better do it soon, because we're already, at November 11th. So folks, the Christmas buying season is already here. And if you want to get these books for gifts, or you want to get them with some Christmas funds or whatever, you should do it before they disappear. Absolutely.
That's a great suggestion, Louisa. I'd also observed that if you go to jamesfetzer.com, you can find my home address. You're welcome to make a contribution by writing directly to me, for which I'd be enormously grateful. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you so much, Jim. And yeah, I've been sitting here scratching. I have a really bad eye and skin condition going on. So sorry if I've been noisy and moving my headset during the report. It's a really bad condition. I don't know where it came from and how it's happened. But anyway, Jim, thank you so much, my friend, for another great report this week. Again, I want to thank you so much for your service. I want to thank all veterans for their service and sacrifices on behalf of our countries. Our country. You are true patriots, and we support all of our patriots here on the GoldFish Report. So, Jim, thank you so much for this report, my friend.
You got it, Louisa. Thank you.
I'll see you again next week. We will be color coordinated again, I'm sure. Me and Jim always accidentally end up doing that. So funny. Anyway, have a great week, folks. Supposed to be, look, we're waiting for this Horowitz report to be redacted. When is it coming? Jim?
Soon.
Yeah, it's coming soon, folks. It's going to be explosive. Get ready. Just get yourself ready. And also, let me also just say this, okay? Get ready for Deutsche Bank to implode. Get ready for a correction, folks, a big correction in the financial system. We are going to be introducing a new U.S. Treasury note. You should listen to our reports for updates. And of course, whatever the president announces, listen to what the president announces. Follow our blog, follow us on Twitter, and don't forget to hit the like button on this video, folks, so that we can get it circulated more. That's important to do. So I would be really careful. I think everybody should be prepared for that, however you want to prepare. We've done reports on this. We did a Dragon interview last week, which outlined some of the details of what they expect this to look like. But that's one opinion. I think it's going to be a controlled demolition. Jim, did you want to comment?
No.
It's going to be a controlled demolition of the economy, the market. Things are a little bit inflated, and we're going to have a correction because China has already announced its gold-backed currency. This is why many countries are going gold-backed. We also have Vietnam, and we have Zimbabwe. These are all pegged now to the gold standard. Many countries, and that's just a couple, many countries are going back to a gold-backed currency, and we will as well. But there will be a correction involved, so prepare yourselves for that, folks. And we will bring more updated information on that as we have it. So thank you, Jim. Thanks to our viewers for watching. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.